This is the January, July 20th meeting of the Planning Commission. I don't know, I'm not on the right day, that's for sure. Call this meeting to order. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda?
I just have an announcement.
Okay.
Wait. It's, I don't know, most of you were here when we were putting in applications for ARPA funds, and I had an application for making videos of the farms of Underhill and the forests of Underhill, and it didn't get funded under ARPA, but the woman at the community TV at MMC TV found some interns to do that. So this summer we've done 2 farms so far, and they only have time to do 4 farms. So that'll be what this particular video is about. And maybe in the future we could do some others, but it's, you know, the purpose is to support local agriculture and try to give them a bigger voice, make themselves known, and celebrate the fact that they're keeping land open for everyone's pleasure and that kind of thing. So,
we got 4 farms in town.
there's a lot of farms you wouldn't think of, like sheep farms.
Yeah.
Dave
Okay.
Martin, we did.
That's right.
Did you do Butler's?
No, I understand they're getting out of dairy. But, I did Sowing Roots Farm up on Pocatello Road. It's a chicken farm. And then I have 2 more to set up.
What about Pleasant Valley Farm?
You mean Valley Dream?
That one, yeah.
Part of it's in Underhill, most of it's in Cambridge. So, you know, that's the way it is with Butler's too, and with Rawson's.
You know, Knee Deep grows all on the Underhill side over there, even though she's in Cambridge, I guess, on Edwards Road. All those fields of vegetables you see before you get to the Underhill Cambridge line are all knee deep. I think they lease the land from Tisdale.
There's a lot of farms, you know, and it's a matter of kind of saying, okay, which ones will you do now? And then in version 2, we'll try to pick up some other ones. So, yeah.
Are they going to put that on the town website? That could be kind of cool.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, that was a good addition. Thank you, Sandy. Still no public, so we'll skip right by that public comment, which takes me to figuring out how to share the screen so that, oh wait, sorry, we have the village center designation. Sorry, one second. So this is a proposal from Brad, which for what it's worth, I totally agree with. I think I mentioned last meeting, the Planning Commission in Jericho's not really been dealing with the village center designation because it's going in sort of like, you're just copying the old one, which is exactly what we're doing because we can't expand it. So Brad said, well, if the Planning Commission's good with it, why don't you all make a motion to review and approve the village center designation as is, just renew it exactly as is, and Brad will deal with it with the select board for final approval. Because we're not actually doing anything. We can't expand it. We're not allowed to. So it's basically just copy and paste.
Where exactly is the village?
It's the Underhill flats.
Oh, just that one. Okay.
The Underhill Center's on a different
time.
Yeah, different rotation. So unless, you know, as I think I mentioned many meetings ago, Brad and I did a call with the person at the state, and we can't expand it by even like 1 parcel. So it's just basically take the old one, and really all they're, I don't know if the state would agree with this phrasing, but all they're really good for is like, if you have historic buildings that you want to renovate, like adding parcels that you want to build on doesn't do anything. So there was that other designation, I'm forgetting the name of now, that we couldn't visit. Yeah, the neighborhood designated area. Yeah, something like that. It was NDA, I remember that. If we wanted to revisit that in the future, we could. But anyway, Brad's proposal was, which seems to make sense to me, I don't know what others think, hey, since we're essentially just copying and pasting the old one to the new one, we can deal with it. There's probably nothing for the Planning Commission to do, but you guys should probably make a motion to do that. So does anyone disagree with that plan or have any comments?
I'll make a motion to do that.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
All in favor?
I
I keep looking back to the TV like someone should. Belle, where are you? All right. Well, that takes us to Michael, but let me figure out how to share the screen. Restart. Sandy wisely is already looking over my shoulder.
What you want to do is.
I want to open this thing first. Okay. There it goes. Why is it not opening now? Oh, there it goes.
There it is.
And then how did you want view?
I think F5 will hopefully give you the,
F5?
yeah, give you the full screen, I believe. Does that work?
Just, yeah, it's weird there's not an F5.
All those keys are F keys.
These are? These
No,
are?
these guys.
Oh, I see it. It's tiny. F5.
This is not doing it.
Okay. But you know, a slideshow, that'll work, right? From the
Should work, I hope. There it is.
All right. We're doing a series of them, if you remember. Sandy did the overview, and then there's a number of people coming in from the Climate Change Task Force. I
Right.
think there were 3 sections, if I look back at my notes, and Michael's starting us off. So,
The first out of the box. I stole Sandy's opening slide.
well, now that I've clumsily started the slideshow with Sandy's help, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, now will you just push the button?
Yep, just let me know when you want me to.
So basically, my name is Michael Oman. I was on the Climate Task Force with Sandy. I'm also chairing the Energy Committee, so I got to pick up on some of the energy sections associated with the Climate Action Plan. My slideshow will not be nearly so sophisticated as Sandy's, as elegant, but so I stole her first slide nonetheless to sort of get it started. So hopefully it will be at least somewhat informative and maybe even a little bit entertaining. We'll see. So maybe we can just go to the next one. So I will basically skip a lot of stuff about the introduction to climate, what climate change is all about and where it comes from. I think we're all on board with that. We're going to sort of try to go straight enough back to the other one if I could. Go straight to the answer. Yeah, that's it. Great, perfect. And basically, in climate, dealing with climate, there are kind of 2 sides of that puzzle. There's the adaptation side and the mitigation side. Mitigation is trying to minimize how much of it actually happens. Adaptation is trying to deal with it happening and make sure that we suffer the consequences less or are prepared for the consequences that we do suffer. And there's also a big area in between where those 2 things join. And that covers a lot of activity associated with it as well. The piece of the puzzle that I am working on is essentially the mitigation side. If we could go maybe to the next one. Basically, in climate mitigation, it equals energy. How much energy we use, what we use it for, and where we get it. There will be the other pieces. There will be some land use pieces and so on and so forth. They're very important, but we're not going to be dealing with that tonight except peripherally. So, okay. So where does our energy and greenhouse gas emissions come from in Underhill? This is an older graph associated with it, but I don't think things have changed very much since then. Basically, if you look at it, 66% of our greenhouse gas emissions and a similar energy use and come from transportation, and 23% come from residential building use. Basically, that means 90% of what we're dealing with is transportation and building energy for dealing with it. So not surprisingly, that's where we kind of began taking off. But let's take a little, if we could go on to the next one. I did want to look at a little bit, I kind of like this slide. This is something that Lawrence Livermore National Labs puts together. It basically shows where energy comes from and what it gets used for. This was put together for the state, the entire state of Vermont, but obviously we're somewhat different. I think that, you know, down on the left-hand side, you can see solar and you can see hydro and you can see all the different sources, including petroleum is a huge contributor. And you can see the flows into the individual pieces that are used, residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation. That's how we use it. There, of course, there's the electrical piece that comes in the middle. It's kind of an intermediate step along the way. But I think the thing that I want everyone to really see about this is the two end blocks that you see there. There's a light gray block and a somewhat smaller dark gray block. The light gray block is what's referred to as rejected energy. That is energy that we use that does nothing worthwhile except produce greenhouse gas. So this is a big piece of the puzzle that we've got on our plate. It's basically, in significant measure, it is a thermodynamic reality. Thermodynamics means that whenever you burn something, you can get much less useful energy out of it than what you put in. And so that's what we're stuck with. And so we're trying to deal with that and trying to address that as a piece of the puzzle. So maybe we can move on to the next piece of the puzzle. Basic solution that most people have come up with is electrify everything. That's kind of a slogan, and it probably reflects pretty well what needs to be done and pretty well approaches that we take in the climate action plan. Electricity has an interesting property in that it can operate at very high levels of efficiency. It can escape that 70% thermodynamic tax that gets put on it, and we can move on to a bunch of things. So that means everything that we do should be electrified, and it will have a significant help. So let's go on to the next piece. A significant piece of the question, you hear this all the time, that the electricity that we use is only as clean as the grid that we get it off of. You know, it's like people say, well, you're using electricity. The electricity itself is incredibly clean, but where you get it matters. As of this particular time, our two suppliers for electricity, Green Mountain Power and Vermont Electric Co-op, both represent that they are 100% carbon free. So basically using electricity is currently 100% carbon free. GMP is striving for 78% renewables, I think, by 2030. And similarly, 2030 co-op is also looking for a similar kind of accomplishment. So basically, when we're using electricity, the grid is it's no longer getting cleaner. It is currently clean. Obviously, any electricity that we produce for ourselves is also going to be very clean. So, yes.
Does that mean it's, at the risk of asking a dumb question, does that mean it's all coming from hydro?
It doesn't all come from hydro. Some comes from nuclear. There is some solar. I mean, the Kingdom Wind and so on and so forth. There are renewables currently in use. They are trying to get away. Hydro is considered renewable under the circumstances. Also, currently, biofuels are considered, biomass is considered renewable, although the Energy Committee has basically adopted a policy that we don't believe that that's a very good idea because of a lot of problems that are associated with it.
So the 22% that's renewable from Green Mountain Power comes from nuclear.
Yes, they're non-renewable. Yeah, that would probably be a nuclear.
Because it's 100% carbon free. So.
Right. Yeah, nuclear is carbon free but non-renewable. So therefore, it would be qualify under that. So anyway, so we've got a clean grid. We can use the electricity with good conscience. So let's move on to some of our electricity. These data were taken from a regional planning analysis that was done. By the way, please ask questions. I think it's better not to wait for questions. Take them as we go along. So this is basically the representation of our electric use in Underhill as of 2015. And just shows where it goes: transportation, building energy, and electricity, the stuff that we use electricity for uniquely. And so this is as we currently use it with fossil fuels and so on. Now, if we use only, if we switch entirely to electricity but don't change anything else, we can go on to the next one. What you see here is what our current distribution would look like with electricity electrifying everything. So basically, we have almost cut in half our total energy demand without changing anything whatsoever, without weatherizing a single house, without cutting a single trip, without doing anything associated with that. This is just simply translating our current energy use to a fully electrified system. Now, needless to say, all of those things will now be electricity. Then both the red and the yellow will also be, but those would be the end uses of the electricity, and the electricity sector itself would expand somewhat. So it obviously has a big effect, and if we add to it the other pieces of the puzzle that we want to talk about, then hopefully we'll see some substantial improvements.
And that's because that electricity is so much more efficient.
Yes, that's correct. That escapes the 70% thermodynamic tax on energy, basically. So we can maybe go on to the next one. So within the climate action plan, the mitigation and energy sections, we basically have 3 sections that address this: transportation, building energy, and the other side of it, where does our energy come from? Renewable generation. So these are the pieces that we're going to be looking at. So maybe we could go on, start with transportation. So not surprisingly, under transportation, the basic premise is electrify the vehicle fleet, and added to that, reduce demand. So that would be a reduction over what we currently have. There has been a target established. It gets a little convoluted. It says transition 41% of cars and small trucks by 2035 and reduce vehicle miles traveled. Total transportation energy demand by 37% by 2035. These targets that we're going to be talking about are kind of several steps removed. They were basically developed as part of the state energy and climate greenhouse gas original laws, and they then got reflected down to regional planning, who figured out what it would take in order to do it, and then these savings were distributed, in the target savings were distributed to individual communities within regional planning based on a couple of different ways, but primarily on population.
There's a fair amount of debate about electrification of cars and batteries and mining and the whole picture when you add everything up, as far as energy goes for electrification of cars and so on. There's a lot of debate about that.
In terms of mining and the substances they need to use for making batteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, right. The mining is very expensive.
Well, and not clean.
It's not clean, and it's also looking at very well, the rare minerals that are necessary for the batteries are usually mixed in with a low-grade ore, which means a fair amount of energy in order to extract them.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree. It is an issue. Nothing that we do is impact-free. As it turns out, the best estimates that we currently have, Private Electric Vermont has developed a considerable amount of data on this. They put together a really wonderful PowerPoint. I've only managed to grab a couple of slides from that. This was not one of them, but the analysis that they're working with is that in terms of life cycle costs, everything, the energy required is 60 to 70% less for an EV over the lifetime of the vehicle, accounting for the manufacture, transport, mining of the materials, and so on and so forth. The best current estimate that we have is that it is a 60 to 70% reduction. Of course, operationally, it's 100% reduction. So that's something we definitely want to work with. But those are the data that we currently have. So I'll probably mention that a little bit as we go. So that said, yes. Any other questions or anything? Okay. Moving right along. Within the overall transportation sector, there are kind of 3 pieces of the puzzle. I wanted to touch on this, especially since I'm at the Planning Commission right now. One is system efficiency. These are things like land use and the way the economy works, and that's so on and so forth. That winds up making shorter trips, reduces the necessity for trips. More things happen locally. Travel efficiency, that's primarily a modal question for low carbon modes. Transit, when it's fully loaded, is a much lower mode. Plus, of course, walk bike is a basically zero emission mode. And vehicle efficiency is where you actually switch to either higher CAFE standards, which is one of the things that we were doing before, or in this particular case, switch to EVs as a means of both reducing energy and basically eliminating operational emissions associated with it. In Underhill, we're basically a rural community, and our ability to implement basically the first two of these, system efficiency and modal efficiency, is limited. We don't really work that well. It's good to have transit for a variety of reasons. It can help, but it's not able, obviously, to solve our problem on that. Similarly with building our centers more closely, obviously we need to do it, but it's not something we can accomplish in anything like a short term and anything like the scale that we're still dealing with. Spread out rural environment where people live and have to go in a lot of places. So really our leverage point in all of this is the vehicle efficiency. EVs is our primary approach to dealing with this, not neglecting either of the other approaches. So moving right along, the targets that were established as part of this target setting process that we talked about, I included this here. It is also in the document that you have available to you. It obviously shows a very significant reduction in in this particular case, they refer to the BTUs, whether we talk about megawatt hours or million BTUs, just the units that any one of the tables gets presented in. In this particular case, we're talking about reducing the estimated energy consumption for passenger vehicles, which is most of the vehicles we have in Underhill, almost all, from 142,000 million BTU to 30,000 million BTU in 2050, with an interim step along the way at around 90, just about 90,000 BTU. Most of that is going to come by conversion to EVs, pretty much all of that in this particular instance. The original targets do, in fact, also talk about heavy-duty vehicles. In other communities, those are much more important. They're talking about implementation of biodiesel in that particular case, rather than trying to electrify the heavy-duty vehicle fleet. But for us, that's not a terribly serious consideration. We don't need to debate very much about what's going on with that. So, and to move along I want to talk a little bit about EVs because obviously it's come up. Davis mentioned one particular very serious and real consideration associated with it. The main types of electric vehicles, again, these next few slides were pulled directly from the Drive Electric Vermont's slideshow. They're a very small portion. I highly recommend their site. Has an incredible amount of useful information, talking about a couple of different type of electric vehicles in this instance, an all-electric versus a plug-in hybrid. A lot of people have been very concerned about range, and range anxiety is kind of a big concern about using EVs and that sort of thing. And there's been a lot of turning to plug-in hybrids. A couple of considerations. One is that battery ranges are getting much higher, as the ranges here for the all-electric vehicle is 70 to 400 mile range. Now, most trips can be
Not in the winter.
Well, winter, it does indeed reduce, but again, that is getting better. But it does. They say it can be as much reduction as 50% if you use a lot of heating and that sort of thing. Or with
In the winter, nobody does that.
No, obviously you do. But how much? But there are also different ways. For example, you can heat. They offer winter packages that do seat heating and steering wheel heating, as opposed to trying to heat the entire cabin, which significantly improves the efficiency of the heating system and that sort of thing. So there are options for reducing even that. The efficiency of the battery, of course, is reduced. With the plug-in hybrid, you add a gasoline engine and
I have one.
Yeah. Excellent.
I like it.
Yeah, that's great. And they have a much lower battery range. They get most of the rest of their range out of the additional gas side. A couple of things associated with that. One is, of course, it's still burning gas, so we don't get the fully 100% reduction. Another is that people don't think about very much is the maintenance associated with the powertrain. The powertrain in an all-electric vehicle is very simple and has extremely low maintenance associated with it. With a plug-in hybrid, you're still maintaining a full internal combustion powertrain, transmissions, and all the things that are associated with that. Adds significantly to the long-term costs associated with the vehicle. So, and they're EVs are getting better, but it is a solution. It's an excellent, it's a way better solution than just, you know, the next Ford 750 or something like that to get yourself around way better. So let's move along here. There has been an operating cost, energy cost comparison associated with it. As we can see, the EV price has stayed fairly stable and much lower than, of course, than the gasoline price, which has gone up over time. For a while, it got close at one point during 2020 when gasoline prices were quite low. But you'll also notice that the gasoline prices are way more volatile than the electricity prices associated with it. And off-peak charging, that little blue line underneath, offers even greater savings associated with it. So it does represent a very significant savings over the course of a few years, just even in operating costs, let alone the maintenance and so on associated. So moving along, charging has been an issue that a lot of people are concerned with. I just wanted to touch on it. If Dave were here, he could go on about all the different connectors and so on and so forth, but there are basically 3 levels of charging. Level 1, which is kind of a fancy extension cord with a fancy plug, which is 110, 120 volts. And you get about 5 miles of range per hour of charging associated with that. Level 2 charging, that's basically a dryer cord and with some additional controls associated with it. 10 to 20 miles per hour of charging, and of course the fast charging systems, which you can get from 150 to 1,000 miles per hour. Tesla ones can be very high. They also have specialized adapters for long trips. If you have to charge while you're on a trip, obviously this kind of charging is very helpful to be able to have access to. You don't want to sit around and charge for an hour or so. On the other hand, a lot of charging stations are getting a sort of parking themselves next to restaurants and, you know, various type of intermediate stops, so you can, you know, time lunch and so on and so forth while you're doing a charge. So that might not be nearly as bad. So,
Which ones do most house electric
Level 2.
have capacity for?
Level 2.
Level 2, yes. Very good. There will not be a quiz.
I don't Lee, that was all the answers.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. The availability of charging is becoming much greater, expanding kind of almost on a daily basis. When this slideshow was put together, there were 342 locations in Vermont. 43 of those were the high DC high voltage level 3 charging stations. They're expanding. There's a federal program to expand them. There have been a number of corridors identified where they're working on making sure they are available, like the interstate corridors, major highway corridors. So even on the road, most users, however, will basically be charging them overnight at home. That seems to be the way that, and you know, with a range of up to 300 miles in many of these, too, between 150 and 300 miles for most current vehicles. That's plenty. You can do all the driving you want to do. It's only for long trips where that would be an issue. I would suggest take the train, but what can I say? Yeah, moving right along. Another concern associated with EVs has been purchase price. The Drive Electric Vermont put together this helpful little chart for a Chevy Bolt, which is kind of a low end range, but it's in a 250, 260 mile range vehicle, and the incentives and rebates and so on that are associated with it. So with all of the rebates that were associated with it, one of them has been reduced, I guess, has to do with the domestic content of battery or something like that.
Isn't it about that the car has to be made in the States, entirely made in the States?
Well, not entirely, but there's a percentage, and then but it's not only the car, but the different components, like the battery, for example.
So the battery's a big part. Yeah.
The battery is definitely a big part, and so I think in 2023, one of these incentives was reduced a little bit because not everything was able to do it. So, you know, instead of $8,800, it'll be like $10,000. But the ability to purchase a brand new vehicle for somewhere between $10,000 and $14,000, it's not the sort of completely beyond the capability of people to actually use. So it's something that is definitely there. So, okay, moving right along. That takes care of transportation. Well, no, actually it does not take care of transportation. The Climate Action Plan developed a number of strategies and specific actions that we might take. I shorthanded these. Again, these are exactly as they are in the document that you have. Just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to see them. It's pretty straightforward. Get away from fossil fuels to electric vehicles. And to go right along with that, it's almost like a 1A or 1B. Increase the infrastructure to support electric vehicle use. In addition to that, support actions that reduce the need for individual vehicle use at all and reduce miles traveled by providing for telecommuting and that sort of activity. So these are the basic strategies associated with it. There were a number of specific actions developed. These are a bit shorthanded, but basically we're looking at requiring the possibility of requiring new buildings to have sufficient charging service plus the 200 amp service necessary to support it. Partnering with GMP and Vermont Electric Co-op. The town installing charging stations to produce what I call sort of the ubiquitous charger availability program. And then build on the reduced transportation opportunities, expand walk bike opportunities. We know that we have a lot of opportunities for that in town, and ARPA is in fact starting to look at the town center sidewalk piece. Look at how to make sure that we have adequate high-speed internet, keep our small, fairly puny public transit system going, but hopefully build on that and also get some more peer-to-peer ride sharing going with the ability of people to provide ride share support. And also smart growth will be ultimately important for the long run. And so we've got a lot to do on these things. So now we've gotten taken care of 66% of our demand for greenhouse gases and energy use. So moving on to building energy, the next 25% roughly. So the basic approach associated with that, electrify heating and cooling. Most cooling is, of course, already electrified. Very few people have gas air conditioners. But weatherized buildings for optimum efficiency. This is one where these two things really do work together and sort of support one another very heavily. So reduce the actual demand for energy and the concurrent potential for greenhouse gas generation by weatherizing homes, and also enhance the use of cold climate heat pumps for providing the actual heat associated with that. So again, these targets were developed as we spoke of before. So taking those targets into consideration, this is what they translate to numerically, so that the total home heating use would be cut basically in half associated with this by 2050, and looks like about 40% reduction or something like that in 2035. A piece of about half of that comes from weatherization, and about half of that comes from expansion of heat pumps. We do anticipate continued continued use of wood heat by people who do it. We do recommend that people use fairly, good quality systems associated with that. But again, the use of biomass, even for heating, has certain disadvantages. As obviously, it's a major part of Vermont's culture, and we don't propose that should be damaged in any way. So, but we anticipate a continuation of some use of wood for heating. So, building strategies associated with it, minimize the use of fossil fuels. Obviously, that we've got that out there already. And weatherized buildings. Those are the key pieces. Develop building standards that will basically put all of these things into place and potentially use less carbon-rich materials. People forget exactly how carbon-rich Portland cement concrete is at this particular point. Anyway, it's staggeringly important in terms of greenhouse gas generation. Pay particular attention to doing this without putting quote vulnerable populations at greater risk, and it's going to take a good deal of care, We don't have a lot of people with particularly low incomes in Underhill, but we do have some, and also older people and so on. So we need to be careful about what we do. I want to call attention to the last one of these. This could be in either or both of these past pieces. Right now, our ability to track what we do on this is fairly poor. The quote-unquote dashboard that literally tracks how well Underhill is doing with respect to either building energy or transportation energy. Both of these are quite possible. I have found it on tables and tried to get powers that be to implement some of these so far without success. We will continue doing it and hopefully have that information to see how we proceed along this trajectory. So that said, the actions that are associated with this, there is a program. It's a pre-audit program that the Energy Committee runs, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. It helps people to analyze what's going on with their homes in terms of weatherization. Most of what's going on, of course, is going to be accomplished by the individual residents and citizens of the town. This is not something that's going to be massively undertaken by the town as a whole. So a lot of it has to do with education. However, with respect to new buildings, the Planning Commission can look at means of actually requiring that 85% of heating be from renewable sources, and also making sure that all homes and buildings have 200 amp service available to support all of these things that are going on. So all of these things are pieces of the puzzle to actually implement this side of the equation. I just wanted to touch briefly the Energy Committee. This is a blower door on somebody's house, who knows where, but the Energy Committee has purchased a blower door and an IR camera. We are offering free energy, we're calling them pre-audits, but they're pretty thorough in terms of home.
Who does it?
Dwight DeCoster is running our program for us. He is the CVOEO executive director with respect to weatherization. He is perhaps the most knowledgeable person in Northwest Vermont about this stuff, and he's on our committee and is running this program. We have a couple of our members who are going to be assisting him in actually doing these analyses. We anticipate that it'll take a couple of hours. It's a thorough analysis of what's actually going on in terms of air leakage, in terms of energy leakage. We use the IR camera to work on that, and an analysis to sort of take a look and see what's really going on associated with it. So we hope that that will help people get to the weatherization piece. Another piece, things that has come up in the past, is the question of cold climate heat pump efficiencies and how well they work in very low temperatures. I did a key analysis associated with this. This is an analysis of a Mitsubishi M series mini split cold climate heat pump. The factor of, there are lots of things of interest. This isn't the only one, but probably the main consideration, or a good index, if you will, of how well the heat pump is working is something called the COP, the coefficient of performance. And so what I've done is I've graphed the data that I had directly from Mitsubishi here of COP at temperature. And from that, you can see, obviously, when you're down at around -10, the COP drops to 1 or below. What that basically means is that to the extent that the cold climate heat pump is working at all, it's operating as a resistance heater. It's not putting out any more heat than you're putting in. As the temperature rises, the amount of heat that you get out of a cold climate heat pump increases dramatically to when it gets up close to somewhere around 20 degrees, you're getting close to 4 times as much heat out of it as you're putting into it, and much energy out of it as you're putting into it. So these are the data. I wanted to find out how important these things really were, so I identified fairly arbitrarily 3 breakpoints of +10 degrees, 0 degrees, and -10 degrees. And I downloaded 2 years worth of fine-grained temperature data from the Burlington weather station, less than an hour or less resolution in terms of temperature. And I directly extracted the number of hours per year at BTV that were below each of those temperatures. So below 10 degrees Fahrenheit was 273 hours per year. Below 0 was 80 hours per year. And below -10 was 7 hours per year. Now, Underhill will be a little colder, but I don't know how long it's going to stay that way unless we get really effective at doing what we're doing. But nonetheless, I think that almost anyone could work with. There's any number of solutions that I could imagine implementing for 7 to 10 or even twice that many.
I got a question about
Yes.
this. So when you're down at -10 and I have a Mitsubishi heat pump.
Yep.
So when it's -10 out, it's still putting heat out, but it's not taking heat out of the outside air at that point. It's just taking
It's basically
the electricity in. It's basically an
Yes,
electric
it's
heater.
basically an electric heater that's blowing on you.
But it still works.
But it still works.
Yeah, because people tell me that, well, it doesn't work when it's cold. Well, it works, but it's not efficient.
And sometimes it doesn't have enough, the amount of electricity that you're putting into it isn't enough to otherwise heat the space as a pure electric heater. So but basically, if you're putting one of these in an existing home, every existing home that I know of has a heating system. Then, so unless you pull it out, you can go to it and basically use this to replace everything above 0, say, and you're operating at a fairly decent level of both efficiency and utility. So, below 0, yeah, turn on the oil heater or whatever you do, or buy an electric resistance heater and sit in front of it, or put an extra log in the fireplace, whatever you do. So, but we're talking about a very low number of hours per year. This is hours. This isn't days. This is hours. This is below this. So, yeah, it's there and it's a real question, but it's not an insoluble question. So, that said, now we've dispensed with 90% of the problem, and we're going to move on to where we get our energy from. And in that regard, the CAP is looking heavily at renewables. So the basic strategy, and this is one that comes out of, it's kind of arbitrary, it's something that I think regional planning cooked up and so on and so forth, but people that are pretty much working on it is to try to provide for 50% of the power that we actually use locally, basically in town. 50% of the rest of it can come from somewhere else, but 50% of it we should be looking to try to provide for a variety of reasons, both practical and moral, if you will. Practical, of course. We're not shipping off vast amounts of money to all sorts of other places. We have these resources available to us that we can control for ourselves. So the basic target that has been developed, it's been developed for 2035, is to generate between basically 5,000 megawatts and 8,500 megawatts of new renewable energy by 2035. So I'd like to move on to that. Oh, no, this one. So basically, Underhill has pretty much decided we're not going to do wind. I don't think it's a very wise decision, but nonetheless, that is where we are, and that's the basis on which this plan has been put together. And so I just wanted to throw this in. We're going to be working off of PV. PV is there, and I just thought I'd throw in a moment of semi-levity associated with it. So I think I might have to set it down here. Hold on, again, I'm following along with the bouncing ball. Go for me here. So that said, the renewables that we're looking at are basically solar PV, and these are the high and the low associated with it. I will not try to be too detailed about how these high and low estimates were developed. Basically, it's a way of allocating the 50%, whether the 50% is allocated on the basis of population or on the basis of available capacity for doing the generation. One is high and one is low. But either one will do. Take the low just for something to look at. 2035, so all new renewables. We're looking at the 5,000 megawatt hours associated with it. We have estimated, based on the information that we have available, what that will mean in terms of installed capacity. That is roughly 4 megawatts of total capacity, and based on the data that the regional planning has used, that will represent 32 acres of solar of solar farm associated with it.
Are you talking about on people's roofs also? To the 32 acres, or is that just?
That 32 acres is just ground. I have some data on roof space available if you want to. There's a much lower capacity associated with roof availability because partly it's associated, it's orientation, shading, and so on and so forth. So roof availability is considerably less. It's actually in here a little bit later. So this is straight up ground availability. So so that said, we have managed to, with much Sturm und Drang, get a solar array established on the Beartown gravel pit. It is net metered and it is 150 kW. So what we've got now, it takes up about an acre. So that's actually fairly consistent with the 4 megawatts on 32 acres. It's actually.
And what does that supply?
It's connected to the town hall and just generally it does it's net metered in the town. I believe town hall is the main main offtake of the net metering associated with it.
This building for all those?
Yes.
This uses all this?
No, it
No,
doesn't.
it's nowhere near that.
It's actually Green Mountain Solar put it up. No, I'm sorry, Green Lantern Solar put it up. And so they sell off a lot of the power, but we do net meter some of the power to town hall.
So that's 1 acre, so we need 32 of those.
32 of those,
For
yes.
20. That seems a little prohibitive. They're difficult to accomplish.
Not necessarily. Basically, right now, Jericho has a 2 megawatt array on their at their garage property. So, and that's just on one property. So, and it doesn't have to be all in the same place. It can be all sorts of different places. So, one of the things that we are going to be well, I'll catch up with this in just a second. I'll try to address that question a little more carefully. Let me see. So, let's go on here a little bit. Potential, this analysis did look at potential locations available for this. The land area in Underhill was analyzed in terms of quote unquote prime potential versus base potential. Now, the language is a little unfortunate. Prime potential basically means that there are no constraints associated with the land for putting these things up. Base potential means there are constraints, but they are manageable. Constraints, I didn't include the whole list of them, but it includes everything from wetlands and riparian lands, and, key forest areas. And
So are you familiar with, I'm not sure if it's the state or who is in charge of this or who is controlling it, but that when you want to use the solar field, something like that, the state's insisting that was a field that was hayed at least once a year. So you can't just go to somebody who has like 10 acres and it's a meadow, but they haven't been haying it. They won't let you put a solar field there.
Well, I think that's not quite true, but
It is true.
it's that certainly prime ag land and ag land is one of the constraints that is in that list, and so therefore it's reflected in this analysis.
No, so my husband works at Norwich Technologies, Norwich Solar, and that's what they're fighting with the state of Vermont right now.
Yeah.
They cannot put a solar field up in a land that has not been hayed for the past 2 years. So if it's been just a yard that somebody's never used, if it has not shown a process of haying over the past 2 years, you can't use that field.
So it hasn't been
really?
used as
Or has
agricultural
been
land?
It has to have been being
She's saying
hayed.
the opposite, basically.
No, it has to be hayed.
Right, it has to have been agricultural.
Right, well, yeah,
To put a solar field on it,
that's correct.
It's weird.
that doesn't seem quite.
That's
I think I'm confident there is there's a miscommunication somewhere.
No,
I don't know what it is yet.
that's my husband, that's what he does for a living.
No, I hear
That's
you.
why they're looking in
I-
Norwich,
that's
they've been Maine and New
Yeah.
Hampshire, they're moving out of Vermont because of it.
Yeah, I don't know what, I would need to find out more, but obviously I want to address this a little bit in a moment, but nonetheless, what can I say? agricultural land does show. But anyway, this has been analyzed. And so they included wind in this particular case, even though we aren't doing wind. But the prime potential, there are 795 acres available in town without any constraints on them, and we're looking for 32. So we have at least that potential associated with it. If we want to go to quote unquote base potential with some constraints, with limitations, there's like 5,000 acres associated available for that. So and we'll worry about what happens with the other one. So this has been mapped. Regional planning took the trouble and mapped it for us, and came up with where these lands are actually located, and the acres associated with it, for prime and base, 795 and 5,000. We didn't take actually acres of rooftop, but the available power associated with them. For the prime is 99 megawatts, base because of the reduced ability to locate on them is 75 megawatts. Rooftop, we have capacity for about 2.5 megawatts of power, and the energy output is also associated, is shown associated with that. So one of the things that I think, let's see, are we going to be getting into that here? Not so much. I'll come off and loop back to that. But one of the things that we are going to be doing as part of the Energy Committee is trying to put together a solar program to work with people and so on associated with these properties. So the strategies that are associated with trying to get renewable energy going. Pretty straightforward. Increase the availability of solar and residential wind. We are allowing that, so we can get some small scale turbines associated with it. Now, the one thing nice about wind is that it's sort of is anti-cyclical with the solar PV. Like wind blows at night, for example, and you know when solar is not available. So some available wind would be a really big help in a lot of possibilities. And also supplement this with energy storage options, either locally or as a larger scale. So the actions that are associated with this, identify additional preferred sites. Now the state law is that all sorts of new, you can get all sorts of special considerations if you're on a preferred site. The last I spoke with anybody about this, it is also possible for the town to designate preferred sites. Right now, the state has sort of made a list of things like, you know, parking lots and old gravel pits and closed solid waste facilities, closed dumps, and that sort of thing are all quote unquote preferred sites for just automatically. However, towns could designate additional preferred sites. And to do that, obviously, the plan should be incorporated in the town plan. It would obviously have to loop back through the planning commission, but hopefully the energy committee will be pulling together recommendations and information to help you pursuing this process. Also look at sort of a community solar arrangement, community co-op for solar, and make it accessible. Look for additional funding. Look for solar generation on existing sites. We are already looking at associating with the town hall as part of one of the ARPA projects. We're looping back to that, and promote solar community group purchase. We're also looking at that possibility. So see if we can do anything associated with that. So let's just go on a little bit. This is one of the things I wanted to address associated with the last, well, not the last question, but sort of there is a growing movement in the U.S. with respect to agrivoltaics. Sometimes it's pronounced agrovoltaics, agrivoltaics, but nonetheless, it has been found that solar PV and agriculture are anything but entirely incompatible, especially with a lot of crops actually like a certain amount of shade associated for their well-being, and also grazing. Anybody who's watched cows standing around in the field in the summertime know that the shade underneath a set of solar panels would be extremely welcome for livestock. It is an increasingly important component of this, and potentially integratable with agriculture. This is particularly important because large-scale solar arrays, anything above 150 kW, require three-phase power. And heretofore, we have not had any in Underhill. However, those of you who are observant may note that three-phase power is currently marching up River Road even as we speak. So yes, they're putting up new poles at the same time. They're expanding three-phase. It's my understanding that that is to go as far as Krug Road, which opens up that entire corridor as a prime solar PV corridor for access. We could put or wind corridor, but I think that's very unlikely. But nonetheless, any larger scale local renewable generation and certainly would be available associated with that. So one more piece, an important thing that is beginning to make its appearance is something called a microgrid. It's an identifiable portion of the regular grid and contains within it both generation and storage capacity. GMP is putting one up and currently putting up a major one in Canton, and we do not currently know the possibility for implementing that sort of thing on either a distributed or a CSA basis in Underhill, but it's kind of at least in our back pocket associated with doing all of this. So these are two of the pieces associated with it. So that said, this is kind of where we get to. We're in a position, I think, to make major and significant and important improvements in the way we use energy and the way we get our energy that make things a lot better for all of us. And so this is the first of a few pieces associated with this. I'll open it up for questions and discussion.
Great slideshow.
Yeah. We have a special guest appearance from Kale, by the way. I need to figure out how to get this off the screen. I don't know why it's still showing.
I was hoping you might be at least a little entertaining.
It was, you did a great job.
Yeah.
The slides are good.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Very nice presentation.
The Energy Committee is doing a lot of what's identified here already.
We are working to.
Does anyone have any questions for Michael or Sandy?
There he is.
There he is back on camera now. Welcome back, Kale.
You gotta turn your mic on.
I think he might be
Like
frozen.
he can
He's frozen. All right. Well, thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
We are available. There's a huge amount behind all of this too. So if you have any other questions or anything, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And I will endeavor, if I don't already know them, I will endeavor to get them.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'll go home and let you guys do this.
Great presentation.
Yeah, amazing. So important. David?
Yeah, okay.
Don't sound so enthused.
Oh, David and I have been at this for a long time. It's always informative and fun.
All right, well, the first thing you can do is throw out all the drafts except for the last one. So what I did is I combined the sections under for the accessory dwelling unit.
Sorry, so you're saying just use the last page?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, 719. But before that, we had
The draft on, 718.
I think if
Yeah,
you go to the
next
very
page.
last page of the handout, you'll be looking at
Sorry about all the previous drafts, basically. My mind seems to think I've got to a conclusion and then decides, nope, got to change that. So,
Thank you.
Bye, Michael.
Bye, Michael. Thank you.
thanks, Mike. Thank you. So, previous to 719 draft, the accessory dwelling units were divided into the attached and detached. And it just seemed like we had the attached and then all the conditions, and then the detached and then repeat all the conditions again, except for one extra addition. So that why not put them all together? Saves print and so on, and no point in doing a lot of repetition. So it's basically what we have already dealt with, except for the 400 feet that I introduced for accessory structures.
What, 400 feet, what are you talking about?
Okay,
Under
the idea
number
is that
4.
Having accessory structures being required to be within 400 feet of the
Oh, okay.
primary dwelling. And the idea is to keep the backlands of larger lots forested and in a natural state. And I came up with 400 feet. What 400 feet works out to is about half of 10 acres, actually. So this is just a diagram of how a typical, maybe it's not typical, but a 10-acre lot with 400 feet on the frontage has about 1,000 feet depth, basically. 400 feet from a house that would be set back, maybe 200 feet or whatever. 400 feet comes to roughly half the lot. So you would have half the lot in order to put the accessory structure on. And I would leave the back half relatively free, basically, for natural growth.
This is number 4?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
needs to say within rather than
No, it
with.
says if the accessory
okay,
dwelling unit is to be within an appurtenant structure, which is supposed to be what, like an outbuilding, you mean? Or an accessory dwelling, an accessory structure? Is that what you're saying there?
If the, let me read it. If the accessory dwelling unit is to be within an appurtenant structure, the above requirements apply, and the appurtenant structure must be, it should be within, rather than within 400 feet of the principal single-family dwelling as measured from the closest point of the single-family dwelling to the farthest point of the appurtenant structure. So,
Why do that at all? Why put that in?
because
It's not in here.
the idea is to keep the backlands of 10 acres.
So what if it's a 3-acre lot?
If it's a 3-acre lot,
Plenty of room. on a
you've got
3-acre
plenty of
lot.
400 feet.
And you just automatically,
Yeah.
you can't break the rule. On a 3-acre lot, you could never get outside the 400 feet.
Oh, I see. what you're
Yeah.
saying. Okay, so if it's like,
3-acre lot, yeah, and it's just to have one statement covering it rather than breaking it up. Is there other comments on that, or
I like the way you drafted it, David. I think
Yeah.
it's clever.
Too.
I put it as the nearest point on the principal dwelling to the farthest point on the accessory structure. If you just put 400 feet between the two, you know what people will start doing? They'll have a 100-foot walkway and put the house, beyond there, way down here maybe, and then you've got a 100-foot walkway that's attached, basically. So if you go behind the house, the farthest point, that includes the house, basically. Maybe games would be played, but not as much.
And we discussed it would have to be off the same driveway as the primary.
Right.
So is that something we would want to add?
It's in here already.
We'll have that. Now, suppose it's on a 5-acre lot with a 200-foot frontage.
Where's the
If
driveway?
you've got a 200-foot frontage, and I think there are a bunch of those over on the Irish Settlement Road, 10-acre lots with around 200 feet, these spaghetti lots, basically.
Oh,
So
in here someplace.
10 or 5, are we
I
talking?
think there are a bunch of 10-acre lots over
Oh,
there.
sure, Joe, it's the
This
big E on the bottom.
is our
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. I think there are a whole bunch of 10-acre lots over on the Poker Hill Road. They're basically spaghetti lots.
They are, yeah.
So they might have a 200-foot frontage, basically, and then they go back 1,000 feet. So that would mean on those lots that the back half of the 10-acre lot would extend farther back.
Right.
But,
Or if you have more frontage, you could virtually just create another home easily within 400 feet,
yeah,
horizontally on the same road frontage. But
within that 400 feet,
right,
yeah.
I guess my only concern would be, what's the desire of the aesthetic in the rural areas? Do you want to have it, is it, and effectively, you're creating two lots almost by giving that 400 feet of leeway, and do you want to have it closer than that, or do you want to have it, the potential of having it look like each lot was subdivided where people added a accessory dwelling?
Well, that's the question. You
Right.
say whether it be,
To me, I think, personally, I think 400 feet seems like it's gonna potentially look like they're more disconnected.
I
If people
agree.
maximize that.
I think they,
So would you tighten the 400?
Yeah. I agree.
well, there's, I did write in 300 feet here,
So that's more of a relationship,
which,
aesthetic relationship to the house, like they're built as a, together as a compound.
What number like sticks out in your mind is the right number?
I wonder if I left that USB here.
Oh my gosh, you did, Michael.
I got some other things on, I didn't know.
There's no.
Easy to forget these.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, sorry about that. I just, I got some other things on here that I.
Oh, 300.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
300 is a possibility, but, there's kind of a balance here, and just, allow enough liberty for the property owner to make decisions. And then there's also, the terrain of Underhill, which is, kind of difficult to deal with in some situations.
Yeah, it could be hugely different on each lot, given the topography and
Yeah.
access and.
Right.
I don't know, I just wonder why we have to put it in at all.
Because in my mind, if we don't have it, it's a total bypass around zoning. Like, we may as well not have any of the subdivision rules.
I like that
Well, you
idea.
weren't subdividing
Yeah,
it,
you're effectively subdividing.
but you're not.
You
still
just
have
can't sell it, you can rent it.
Okay, but what's the difference?
Well, then, all the reasons we don't want subdivision, like forest fragmentation, and da-da-da, we might as well just throw them all out, right? The only difference is you can't sell it, you can just rent it. Other than that, you've gone around every philosophical reason we have subdivision.
Isn't there?
Yeah, you end up with, more
Does
driveway,
what does a permit actually mean?
Accessory.
accessory.
No, it means more than that. We'll look it up,
Well,
because I
it
think you
means
can,
subordinate.
Yeah, I tried reading into the verbiage on it pertinently.
It's
I can't
it's
see
the
it.
language
I'd like to
that's
get rid of
used
that
by
word
the
personally and use
state.
something that's more understandable for everybody,
What
because
is?
I don't get what it means. Even when I look at the definition of it. So,
Detached structure.
yeah, so
Well,
let's
this
just use a detached accessory structure.
Yeah, but it's just the language that the state uses in their statutes. So
They use that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but those
they use
are
That's the
lawyers.
That is the word they use.
a permit refers, this is regarding in property, refers to rights.
The state disagrees with you.
Rights
Yeah.
and restrictions that run with the land. The term is generally used in context of easements or covenants and is distinguished from rights or restrictions in gross, which doesn't permit building.
Yeah.
Okay, so the levels.
Well, can't we just say associated with
Well, we could.
a single family dwelling or
It
within
says
the structure?
permanences are considered to be any permanently fixed item on a parcel of land. A building such as a house, garage, shed, or barn is considered to be a appurtenance.
Can we just use accessory
We
structure?
could just use accessory.
I
That's
agree
what
with
we
you,
did
I agree.
use in the past, but
It's like complicated
Yeah.
language to me that just kind of muddles the whole
I agree.
thing.
So
we
what
could
would
use
we
it.
say?
We could use accessory. Don't feel strongly about it. I was
I
just
totally
passing
agree. I think
through.
it's pertinent in every sense.
Okay, maybe we should just go around the table and see what everybody thinks about the 400-foot thing.
Well, one quick question on that. Do we say accessory or do we say like a structure subordinate to? I'm not trying to words, well, I guess I am trying to words with it. What do people think? What's the right way to say this? Or do you want to circle back on that?
I think accessory is the word, but accessory is found in a lot of places.
Well, accessory
So-
dwelling is the term we're trying to get through. Accessory structure is different than an accessory dwelling.
Within a
Right.
So you
structure
gotta watch
accessory
those two
to?
terms.
Yes.
I think we just call an accessory dwelling unit.
There you go.
If the accessory dwelling unit is to be within,
An accessory structure,
yeah,
that, it leaves a little,
It's weird, it sounds weird to
That
me.
does
It's
sound weird.
accessory.
no.
Can't we say associated structure?
no, they're saying, yeah,
Associated.
associated structure, I like that, Sandy.
Within a structure associated to, or within a structure associated with single family dwelling? I don't know. We have to send these to CCRPC anyway, so they might change it. Yeah, it'll come back as a permanent.
Simple lines and undertone.
We can try them, right?
I got the 400-foot thing, 300 feet.
Oh, yeah, you wanna go
I'm having trouble. Yeah, I'm having trouble with that because I think every situation is different.
Yeah,
It just seems to be restrictive and like, kind of like not in my backyard, you know what I mean? And I'm kind of, I have trouble with that because I think it's elitist. You know, the whole, let's put a restrictive law in here that is kind of elitist to somebody to in a lot of situations, but that's how I feel.
So are you saying you'd take 400 feet?
I wouldn't even put it in there. I don't see what the point is. It's not, it's like, and if you're on the ground and you're looking at, every lot is different, okay? So maybe there's one out there where the best place for the accessory dwelling unit is 600 feet away. You get, you know, and that lot will never be subdivided. So why is it, it's not like you're creating two separate homes, you know, it's part of the, forever, it's going to be there. It's going to be a part of that singular lot, so.
But it fragments that
Yeah.
piece of land.
I think the point is conservation.
It
So
is,
if
yeah.
you want to conserve lands, you want that ADU as close to the main house as
400
possible.
feet seems a lot.
Yeah, but what if you have a lot that has a meadow over here and a big chunk of woods, and then the house is on a meadow here? Every lot is different. You can't.
Sometimes you
Before,
can't do
geez.
it on a lot, right?
Maybe you can't tell them no.
Because there's a wetland or a pond or,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, there's probably,
Right.
yeah, so.
So
What if-
maybe you can't put one on every lot is what I'm
Right.
saying.
But you can't deny somebody an accessory dwelling unit.
But a detached one you can, if it doesn't fit, they can do it attached.
Yeah, right.
Well, 400 feet is quite a large,
We're just
I agree.
denying.
distance, actually. You know, it's, 400 feet's a large, gives you pretty large margin, basically. I mean, 400 feet away is not going to be.
I guess what's the vision of the plan? And that's what we're trying to, that's what the planning commission does, right? So if you're saying you don't care, I guess if you don't have an opinion as far as what you want, we have certain zones which we wanted to have protected, or maybe scenic areas, they're lower density development, but this affects the aesthetics of those areas. So I guess I just would say take that into consideration. If that's not a consideration of the planning commission, then put it where you want. I guess it's.
Where do you fall on that?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure what you just
Yeah.
said.
You kind of gave us.
That was really good walking the line
I
there.
feel like you gave us the arguments on both sides,
Are you ready, Crow?
which I totally agree with. What would be you fall? Like personally?
Well, I think if there was zoning put in place to create a certain aesthetic,
Yeah.
a certain density, preserving view corridors, then if you're changing the zoning with the accessory dwelling, it's going to impact those areas.
Yeah.
Then you're kind of changing what the original intent was of that zoning. So maybe if that's what you're doing, and you're good with it, making that change to what was previously.
Still don't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
You good with 400 feet or no?
I'm not saying personally, I'm just saying philosophically, what it should be based on.
Well, in most of the zoning areas that it's going to be affecting are, there's the Mount Mansfield Scenic Corridor, so they're scenic and we're trying to get the scenic and forest. And then there's the Soil and Water Conservation District, that's would be affected by it. And then there's the I think just the Straight Water Conservation District. Those are 10 and 20 acre zoned areas.
I
So,
think
10,
water's
15.
only 5. I think water's 5.
Water's 5.
David.
well, we've
I
got
think it may only be, based on your drawing, it may only be scenic and soil and water that's affected. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's possible on the 5 where you would.
Can
be
you
knocking out
say
your tiny
that
corner.
then?
Well, 5,
Can you
isn't it?
say in the scenic, in these specific districts or in these specific zoning areas that the,
Yeah, we could do it that way.
why don't you do it
He
that
was
way?
But I'm
trying
just saying
to
that this
make it apply to all of them by
Yes,
having it there.
pretty much covers 5 acres, basically.
I like David's because it's elegant, like it sort of does that without.
I got another question about this. So somebody asked me this, and I don't want to get into details, but I own 90 acres, okay? And where would you put an accessory dwelling unit? This question came up for me. And I said, well, I'd put it down in the field, away from your house. So, and he's in the 10 acre zone. So he has to put his accessory dwelling unit 400 feet from his house, not 1,200 feet from his house. And it's like, well, I think that you're going to create more problems with this than you're going to solve by, you know what I mean?
I do.
It's like, where would you want it if you had 90 acres?
Right.
Well,
Would you want it in the field, away from your house, right next to the road, along the
But
driveway?
this goes to a philosophical debate, I think. I think maybe David said it. One approach is like, yeah, we get that, but we care about forest fragmentation and other stuff, so too bad. The other approach is, yeah, put it wherever you want. We don't care about chopping up the land. However, I'm not trying to be cute.
Yeah.
So go put it 1,200 feet away and put in a separate driveway and blah, blah, blah.
Well,
They're two totally different philosophical approaches
yes.
to use.
So an accessory dwelling means what? It should be an accessory to the main building. So an accessory to the main building is not going to be located
1,200
feet
feet.
away.
You have 90 acres, you could, and you're in 10 acre zoning, you can subdivide.
You could
Yeah, but that's a whole different process, and what if you don't want to do that? I mean,
Well,
But it's the philosophy of the accessory, what is an accessory apartment? Accessory to the
Accessory
main
to the
dwelling.
main house, yeah.
yeah, but
It should have some relationship.
So this is, we're going to argue about this for the next year. So how close is accessory? To me, it's.
Well, I don't know, my necklace could be around my neck, my earrings
Yeah,
could be an
it could
accessory,
be-
it
so-
should be close too.
So, and then, like I think about forest fragmentation, like, if you put it in a meadow away from your house versus in the woods, 400 feet from your house, which is the more successful? What's the better way to fragment the forest? 400 feet from
not.
your house in the woods.
With 90 acres, there might be another way of dealing with that. That could be
Yeah, we have
theoretically
to address that.
subdivided, but you
Yeah.
could say, maybe we should have something in the zoning regs about family compounds or something of that sort that
Well, we
would
kind of
allow
do,
for
don't we?
something
We
like
have
that
more.
without actually subdividing the property.
That
So
is-
that would be a different issue, basically, than what we're talking about here.
Just think.
Right,
we're
because
so
then
down
that's
the rabbit
not
hole.
an ADU. That, to David's point though, then that's not an ADU, because if you could put a second house somewhere else, then that would.
Yeah, but what if you don't want to do that? What if you didn't want to subdivide? You're just saying.
So again, I would go back to I agree with you to some point, but I think my point is that it's an accessory dwelling unit, it's an accessory to the house. It's not another house on the property out in the back of 40.
Exactly.
So,
I agree.
but 400 feet, I don't know, it just seemed like a lot.
It is a lot.
Uh,
But
The way I
it's kind
look
of a
at it
balance, basically.
is
how do you feel, Bart?
that the ADU is put up by the property owner to benefit them,
Correct.
either as a rental or a mother-in-law apartment, something like that. So I think that the person that benefits the most from it ought to be the person that has to put up with the ADU. So therefore, I like attached or closer the better. Otherwise, I mean, I come down on the conservation side on this one, maybe Sandy, that I don't want to see forest fragmentation. So, and, you know, once again, if we've got 90 acres, then you can always subdivide.
Yeah, exactly. Carolyn?
I agree with what Bart said.
Sandy?
Yeah, I do too. And, you know, I'm not good with distances.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I knew what
No.
400 feet is.
If
That's a
it's,
long way in the
if
woods.
300 feet is better, then I would prefer that. Because I think it really, it belongs near
Yeah.
the main house. And I just don't know what that near actually is.
I'm with Sandy, and I would say exactly what Bart said. I literally, I would just say ditto to what Bart said. And I would tighten it up to like at least 300 feet. And I definitely, I don't think I'm a total outlier. I absolutely believe that particularly with people who own out-of-state owners of properties, that they will absolutely build a second Airbnb using this ADU rule, and then they should have to live with it. So,
And just a real example of a project that we were looking at in another town, which it was a larger parcel, it was like 200 acres, but it also had Act 250 restrictions. So they actually had the ADU to Roy's point, had to be located further away from the main property, just because it was in the other areas in prime ag lands, and there were wetlands and other things that restricted you, where you wouldn't have been able to put an ADU closer or within 400 feet or even 200 feet. It's probably like 1,500 feet away.
right.
So we said at 400 feet, you know, that doesn't mean people are going to put the house at 400 feet. And it may allow for property variances that make it difficult, you know, to put it wherever. The 400 feet just allows a little more freedom for the owner to select a site, numbers around it. So.
And you people that are good with distances, how far would, like, from here to the neighbor's house there, how far is that?
300, 200,
Yeah.
From here to
the next door neighbor.
the different, see what.
Between
these
feet long.
Yeah, between
these two buildings, basically. Yeah, something like that.
What's that?
Maybe 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't want it much further than
No.
that. No. So probably 300 would be, I think 300 would be generous if that's the distance from here to there.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll try to convince you, Roy. You don't have to be.
You're never.
You don't have to be. You don't have to be convinced. No, what? Here's my argument. We haven't taken anything away from that, right?
Yeah.
So here's what the state said. You can build accessory dwelling units. We're loosening the rules, right?
Yeah.
So whatever rights he had previously, he still has. All we're saying is, on top of that, if you want to build an accessory dwelling unit and not deal with all of the rules that currently exist, like, you can do so. We'll make it a little easier. We, the town, will make it a little easier. But for it to be easier, you have to put it within 300 feet or whatever, right? So you still have all the ways you could have done it before, whether that's subdividing or whatever. You still have all those. But if you want to put it within 300 feet of your house, 400 feet of your house, okay, we'll make it a little easier for you to do it that way. So it's not, he hasn't lost anything. You still gained all the rights everyone else has gained. You just have to do it within X feet of your current structure. So
Yeah.
we're not taking anything away from it. That's
Right now.
he got everything that everyone else got.
But right now, you can put it anywhere you want, as long as it's within the setback. But now we're restricting that, so, yeah, every situation is different.
Yeah.
If you're on the ground looking at something, you would say, wow,
Failed
this
to
should be 1,000 feet
I
away.
failed to convince.
300.
I failed to convince.
Yeah,
everyone on this one.
I think there's situations that I looked at, experience, and not, you know, like actually on the ground looking at it.
Oh,
So
sure.
I think that to me is
I'm
why I
sure it
disagree
will.
with this.
I'm sure it will inconvenience someone without
Oh, yeah.
question.
And maybe it never will. Maybe everybody will be all right with that. it's hard to say. So.
So do we have kind of, have people sort of come around to what their opinion is on it? So can we decide on?
Yeah, let's, well,
300 feet or whatever?
we know we're.
I'm not
Because you just went.
right now.
No, but we know we're, what would you do? If your choices are
Make it closer.
Roy, 300, 400, or other, what would you do?
I'd make it closer.
What,
300.
300,
Yeah, 400.
400?
200.
Coming into it.
I'd be happier with 150.
Okay.
I have a rifle range at my house, 50-yard rifle range.
Yeah.
And that's 150 feet. That's a long way.
Okay.
And if I put up a house at the end of that rifle range, they'd be well away from my house.
So I'm just gonna skip back to try to come to a consensus. Just because that number I still know where Roy stands.
Yeah.
Would you go with 200 or would you still stick with 300? I'm just trying to see where we
I
live.
think the closer the better.
So would you go with 200 with Bart? Or 150? I'm just trying to see if we can get to an ultimate consensus here. Or do you want to stick with or do you want to think about it? Because we can do this next week.
Yeah.
I would really love somebody to show me what 150 feet
What
does look
What
like.
if we do that, Carolyn? What if everyone goes home, does their due diligence, and
Get your
try to
feedback.
think about 150 feet? In Roy's case, 7,000 feet. Just figure it out for yourself.
You know, 150 feet, you know, but
That's
a couple hundred feet between these two houses here is one thing, but take 200 feet and you've got ledge here and you've got something over on this side. The land is dropping off.
No, I agree, David, but maybe everyone can go home, because it's already 7:30, like go home and leaves outside. So
Yeah.
what if everyone goes home, thinks about the distance?
Right.
It feels like we're there, basically, right?
Yeah.
What we're trying to decide on is,
Yeah.
if there's gonna be a distance, what's it gonna be? So why don't we go home, think about it? We know like one end, we know where Roy is, no distance. We know where Bart is, like 150. That's obviously a big spread. Like, let's go home and just like read this, see if you catch anything else, and we can probably knock this out in 15 minutes next meeting.
Well,
Right?
and just keep in mind, it's accessory and you can have an attached.
Right.
The purpose of it. What is the purpose of this extra unit?
Right, it's not a
Now,
subdivision.
none of these are gonna be.
They're all the
They're not, you know, it's
So,
unfortunate.
I'm just asking that you keep it in mind because yours is a totally different, it's fascinating. I don't agree with it, but it's just my interpretation of accessory dwelling is very different than yours.
Yeah.
Because with yours, I would just say didn't attach it to the house and be done with it.
Well,
I'm thinking mother-in-law's accessory
Yeah.
dwelling, affordable housing,
Right.
and that.
it's also an income producer for the property owner, and that's an
Yeah.
important aspect of it. So it's not just something that would be intimately part of the family. It's
Well, could be
Something
or
that-
couldn't be.
I don't think it should be limited to that. You know, that's a big limitation.
What's a big one?
It's a big limitation to have it really close to the house because that means an intimate connection with the person in the single-family dwelling home with the accessory resident. And that may not be the case. And
That's why we're all gonna measure, David, and decide what number.
One other thing I want you to think about.
I got another thing too to think about here, okay?
Oh, my
God. A different issue. I want you also to look at 1B. The owner is of an entity other than a person in which the case, you know, it's a.
Yeah,
Rather
that's a good
than-
way around that one, right there.
Well, that's
Is that the state said that?
no,
Or
that's something that we have said. We've added it. We've made it more liberal. We allow somebody from out of state to come in and buy a house and treat
Set up a
that as
corporation.
basically a condominium corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can buy up 10 houses.
Oh, so your point is, do we want 1B?
Right. I don't think, I'm not so sure we do, really.
Ooh, that's a good deal to think about.
But I think that that's quite liberal.
What is? to have it.
Yeah.
The way it
It's
is.
like, wow, that's really opening.
It is.
Yeah.
It's opening
can
it
of
up
worms
to,
right there on
some billionaire coming in and bang up the town.
Okay, so we're gonna think about, notes to myself, we're thinking about, well, to everyone, we're thinking about the distance, number one. Number two, equally important, we're thinking about 1B. Thank you, David.
And Roy, you said you had something else.
And now, Roy, what do you want us to
Yeah,
think
well,
about?
I guess my one question is, what if there is not a suitable place to build an accessory dwelling unit 200 feet from your house, or 400 feet, whatever we choose, but you can't do it because of X 10 different possibilities. I can think of a wetland, a ledge, there's not access, the little road to it would be too steep. Okay, so what does that person do? I got 10 acres and I want to put one on my lot, but there's no place I can do it that's 400 feet away. There's a place I can do it that's 600 feet
So
away.
your
Do
question
they have to go to the DRB to get, can they get a variance for that?
No, because
Because they're creating
I
that.
don't know that they, technically it says, are you creating your own?
Yeah, but so you can't do it. And I'm just saying
I
that
think that's your, you'd have to go attached.
I mean, but
I know.
No, but your question is, should there be a fallback? Your question
is
is,
there?
your question is, if we're doing a number,
But
then should there be a fallback under some set of conditions?
right, and we're trying to
So
stay
that's
away from conditional.
so that's
uses.
number 3.
Yes, right. I mean, really the most reasonable way of dealing with these accessory dwelling units to me is making them all conditional use permits, but that's what we're getting away from here. So because of the complexity of that, we want to just simplify this. So I guess if we had a zoning administrator sitting in the chair right now, he'd be able to help us through some of these.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and break your heart and say we have no new applicants.
Next question.
Despite our
I was
old
gonna say,
school sign outside town hall.
The moment I was driving down the road and said, I think that'd be a good job.
In fact, the sign up here, someone said to me, brought up the sign to me and said, oh, looks like you're looking for volunteers for the planning commission. I'm like, no, that's why there's a dollar
That's why
sign.
it's
It's like a same job. What do you do? Our sign's not even working. All right, so those are the 3 things we're gonna think about, right?
And then the setback situation, or the property,
Yes,
we have to address that also.
the setback situation.
Are we going to keep the setbacks the same as they are for accessory structures?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we had a couple.
You mind, that's something else we have to do.
We were just making a list of what we have to talk about next week. You haven't missed anything.
Really?
That's where it's
I
7:30.
apologize.
No. Okay, so for next week, I have the 4 issues that we are, next meeting, not next week. So we're going to talk about distance. We're going to talk about 1B. We're going to talk about what Roy just mentioned about should there be some fallback. I have the note. And then we're going to talk about setbacks. Anything else? We're not going to finish this in 10 minutes, but maybe in a half an hour.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be done, David.
You probably.
David, thank you for everything.
Within that distance, there's still all the other criteria are still gonna apply if there are
Correct.
primary soils or if there's a wetlands or a wildlife.
Yeah, because you can't build if you couldn't build the primary residence. So, yeah, this does not override like anything else. It's still subject to, the rules just can't be more restrictive than they would be to build the primary.
Right, but you might be able to build a primary house in this area around those restrictions, but then the 400 feet might be all within
Right,
those conflicting areas where you can't build.
right, which is kind of what Roy's bringing up.
Yeah.
Well, what Roy's bringing up, could that come under conditional use or?
Yeah, we
Roy
can
mentioned
put
that
that in conditional use, this conditional use item in this. I don't know if we're allowed to do that.
You can't create your own problem.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
it's not our own problem. That more has to do with,
You're making it more non-conforming.
Yeah, but
So therefore
you basically would shut somebody out, which is.
that, yeah.
So are you ending?
unless you really want to, do you want to keep going?
No.
All right, so
I want you to make a motion to adjourn.
no, I'm trying. I also didn't want to cut people off, Carolyn. It's a fine social balance. All right, I have the 4 issues for our next meeting. And thank you very much, David, for doing this. Feels like we're close. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Wait, second. Carolyn got it.
All right, all right.